24, I'm 80. My Amish mother-in-law took my baby before I could ask why. Don't reach for him yet. That's what my mother-in-law says, as she lifts my baby from the bed, still slick-haired and crying, before I've even seen all of his face. The room smells like boiled sheets and wood smoke, and the cold from the cracked window keeps sliding under my damp nightdress. Someone shuts the door, softly. That's worse. I hear my husband, Eli, breathing near the stove, but he doesn't step forward. He keeps rubbing the black thread at the edge of his left cuff. My mother-in-law wraps the baby in a gray wool blanket, with one red stitch near the corner, then turns her back to me. I ask where she's taking him. No one answers. The floorboard beside the washstand gives one dry pop, the same sound it made every winter, and I remember thinking that sound was proof I was still in my own room. I wasn't. Not really. She says something to the midwife. 5 words. I can't hear the middle 3. Then my baby stops crying. And then she, sorry. Give me a second. I remember it was snowing. No, wait. The snow came the next morning. That night the yard was only hard with frost, white around the pump handle like salt. I didn't know there was a rule. I only knew every woman in the room knew it except me. I was 19 then. I'm 80 now. Quick pause. My name is Sarah, and this is Rebecca Amish Home. If these stories make you feel less alone, subscribe. It's free, and it lets me keep telling them. Tell me in the comments, when did others decide what motherhood meant for you? And if you want to go further, a super chat or membership, you're saying these voices matter. It keeps this going. Now, back to what happened. When Ruth came back from the hall, she wouldn't look at me. She set the enamel basin under the bed, wiped her hands on the blue towel hanging from the chair, and told me to rest, as if rest were a thing you could choose. In our district, young wives yielded to older women after a birth. Nobody called it a law. The Ordnung was mostly spoken through habit, through who sat where, who answered first, whose hand reached for the child without asking. We were taught that order kept pride from growing wild, and that peace came when each person stayed in the place God had given them. But in my husband's family, that old lesson had hardened into something smaller and sharper. The grandmother decided, when a new mother was ready to hold her baby. I had never heard those words. That's the thing nobody tells you. Rules don't always arrive as rules. Sometimes they arrive as a woman taking your child while everyone else studies the floor. It lived in tiny things long before that night. My mother-in-law, Anna, poured the coffee at Sunday visits even in another woman's house, and the other women passed their cups toward her without thinking. When I was 16, I watched my cousin Miriam reach for her own crying daughter during a quilting bee, and her husband's mother touched Miriam's wrist with 2 fingers. Just 2. Miriam stopped. The needle in her other hand hung above a green patch shaped like Ohio, and nobody said a word. I almost asked Mama why, but she was smoothing crumbs into her palm beside the bread plate, her mouth pulled thin in the way that meant, don't bring trouble into a room. Miriam's baby cried until her face turned blotchy, then quieted against the older woman's shoulder. Afterward, Miriam laughed too loudly about burnt pie. That was how correction worked. No shouting, no threats. You saw what happened to the woman who reached, and next time your own hands stayed folded. I married Eli in October of 1965, when the maple by the Bishop's Lane had gone the color of rusted tin. 3 weeks before our wedding, Miriam pulled me behind the wash house and gave me 12 words. Be patient, keep peace, and don't shame him by asking foolish things. 12. I counted them later because they were all the preparation I had. Mama told me how to pack wool blankets, how many jars of beans a new wife should bring, and which side of the stove burned hottest. Ruth, who had delivered nearly every baby in our church district, told me labor came in waves and that I mustn't fight my body. Nobody told me what would happen after. Eli didn't know either. He was 23. No, 24. I always get that wrong because his birthday came 9 days after the wedding. He knew how to shoe a nervous mare without getting kicked, but he didn't know whether a mother should hold her own child first. And I trusted him. I need that understood. Eli had a shy way of leaving gifts where I would find them without having to thank him face to face. A smooth blue button on the windowsill, the last pair wrapped in newspaper inside my sewing basket, a peppermint tucked under my hymn book. Once, during our first winter, he walked 2 miles back through sleet because I'd left Mama's biscuit cutter at her house and cried over it like it was a person. He returned with ice-crusted white on his hat brim and said only, "Thought you might need this." I loved him. I think I loved him. I don't know if either of us knew what love was supposed to ask of us yet. The week before the baby came, he built a cradle from ash wood and sanded one rail until midnight because his thumb kept finding a rough place. He wanted to keep us safe, but you can't protect someone from a rule you can't see. The days leading up to the birth were full of work that looked like care. Anna washed 6 squares of old linen in lye soap and laid them flat over the lilac hedge, though there wasn't a leaf left on it. Mama brought chicken broth in 2 blue jars and told me not to let Eli finish it. Miriam hemmed a small cap with stitches so close together they looked like a row of black seeds. Every woman told me what to eat, when to walk, how to breathe, which psalm to repeat when the pain grew teeth. Not one asked what I wanted. Not one said, "Your child will still be yours when the room fills with older hands." I remember, no, actually wait. Anna came on Thursday, not Wednesday, because Thursday was wash day, and her knuckles were red from the cold rinse water. She placed her carpet bag beside our bed, looked at the cradle, and moved it 3 feet closer to the door. Then she said, "It'll be easier there." Easier for whom? I didn't ask. The smallest thing I remember is a chip in the white enamel pitcher, a brown crescent near the handle no bigger than a fingernail. I stare at it between pains because the kerosene lamp makes the chipped place shine wet. Our room is hot near the stove and bitter cold by the wall, so one side of my face burns while my bare feet feel packed in snow. I'm wearing Eli's old cotton shirt because Ruth says my nightdress will only get ruined, and the cuff keeps slipping over my right hand. Outside, a buggy rattles once on the frozen lane, then fades. The clock downstairs strikes 2, though it has always run 7 minutes fast. Eli stands beside the walnut chest with his suspenders hanging loose and sawdust still caught in the crease of one boot. He keeps opening and closing his hands. Anna sits straight-backed in the cane chair. She hasn't taken off her bonnet. Every time I cry out, she looks at the lamp flame. Ruth tells me to push, then tells me not yet, then changes her mind. Her voice stays low, but the tendon in her neck jumps each time she leans over me. Eli comes near enough that I can smell cold air and horse on his coat. "Sarah," he says, and stops. I reach for his wrist because it is the only part of him close enough, but Anna says, "Let Ruth work," and he steps back as if pulled by a rope. My fingers close on nothing. Another pain rises. I press my tongue to the roof of my mouth until I taste the little cut I'd made biting it earlier. Ruth says, "Now." The room narrows to the lamp, the wet cloth on my forehead, and Eli whispering a prayer he can't finish. Then there is a cry, thin at first, then strong. My whole body goes loose with relief, and my arms lift before anyone tells them to. Anna stands. Ruth holds my son for only a moment. I see one dark curl stuck above his ear and a tiny fold in his left shoulder. Then Anna's gray sleeve crosses between us. "The grandmother settles him," she says. Eli looks at her, then at me. His lips part. Nothing comes out. I say, "Please, just let me see," but my voice is so raw the last word breaks. Anna isn't rough. That's important. She takes him with both hands, supports his head, wraps him in the gray blanket, and moves with the calm care of someone doing what she has done before. That's what makes it worse. My arms are still lifted. They begin to shake. I want to call her back, and I want to be good enough that she turns around on her own. I want Eli to stop her. I want to spare him the shame of choosing. The baby cries against her chest. She says, "A weak mother makes a fretful child." Then she carries him into the hall. The door shuts with a soft wooden click. I stare at the iron latch because I can't make my head turn toward Eli. Ruth presses warm cloths against me and says, "Easy now," while my body keeps searching for a weight that isn't there. Eli sits on the edge of the chair Anna left behind, bonnet strings still lying across one arm like pale snakes. He says she knows babies. I say I know, though I don't know anything except that my hands feel empty enough to hurt. Minutes pass, maybe 20, maybe 40. The lamp smokes and leaves a dark thumbprint on the glass. I notice one loose thread on the quilt near my knee. I wind it around my finger until the tip turns purple, then pull until the red square puckers. Eli reaches toward me once, stops, and puts his hand back on his thigh. From downstairs comes the faint scrape of a rocking chair and my child's cry, growing hoarse. Anna kept him until after sunrise, 7 hours. Ruth later said it was closer to 6, but the fast clock showed 9:12 when Anna finally brought him upstairs, and I had heard it strike 2 not long before he was born. She said I had needed sleep. I hadn't slept. I had lain with my face toward the wall, counting the knots in the pine board beside the bed, while milk dampened Eli's shirt against my chest. Neither of us understood that taking a newborn from his mother without a medical need could make feeding harder, deepen fear, and turn those first hours into something the body remembers. In our house, the logic was simple. Elders knew, young wives obeyed, and distress proved the young wife needed more guidance. Eli wasn't cruel. He had been raised to believe stopping his mother would dishonor her and expose me as unruly. So he guarded the rule while thinking he was guarding me. I didn't know I was allowed to say, "Give me my baby." I didn't know a mother could set a boundary with an elder and still be a good woman. I didn't know that freezing, going quiet, and agreeing while your whole body says no are not the same as choosing. Those words came much later, after I had left the district, after a nurse at a county clinic drew 2 circles on a paper napkin and wrote authority in one and care in the other. She showed me that the circles could overlap, but they were not the same thing. I stared at the ink bleeding into the napkin's little flowers and felt something inside me tip. Eli hadn't been trying to hurt me. Anna believed she was teaching me. That's the thing nobody tells you. Harm can be handed down by gentle hands. And once I finally held my son, I was already apologizing to him for a choice I had never been allowed to make. For months, every time my son cried, I moved before I thought. I learned to cross a room without making the floorboards speak, and I would lift him so fast my back caught like a rusted hinge. By the time he was 3 months old, I could tell which cry meant hunger, which meant cold, and which meant he had simply startled himself awake. But I still waited for permission in ways no one could see. If Anna was in the house, my hands slowed. If Eli's boots sounded on the porch, I checked my face in the dark window and made it calm. I began counting things to stay inside myself. 6 jars on the shelf, 4 nails above the stove, 11 stitches along the baby's left sleeve. That was my little survival trick. Some women prayed. I inventoried furniture. Dark humor, I suppose, though it wasn't funny then. I built a whole safe room in my head and furnished it with objects nobody could take. Eli tried, in the only ways he knew. He warmed bricks by the stove and wrapped them in towels for my feet, and once he carved a wooden bird for the baby with one wing shorter than the other. I loved him for that bird. I resented him while I loved him. Both things sat at the same table. At night, when the baby slept in the ash cradle, Eli would reach across the mattress and stop before touching my shoulder, waiting for some sign I couldn't give because I didn't know I was allowed to have signs. So I learned to become agreeable before anyone asked. I learned to say it's fine while my jaw ached from holding it still. I would leave my body by fixing my eyes on the water stain above the bed, the one shaped like a rabbit with no ears. By our second winter, I could vanish without moving. That's the thing nobody tells you. Disappearing can look exactly like obedience. The first woman who nearly told me the truth was Miriam. We were at a quilting bee in Leah Hostetler's front room, where the stove smoked and made all our eyes water. Miriam was threading a needle with brown cotton when I said, very softly, "Did Anna take yours too?" Her hand stopped. Leah's spoon struck the side of a crock in the kitchen. Miriam looked at me, then at the door, and said, "Not for long." 4 words, that was all. A minute later, Leah came in, carrying apple butter, and Miriam began talking about the weather so fast she said Tuesday had been windy twice. I almost told her about counting the knots in the wall. I even opened my mouth. But Anna's sister sat 2 chairs away, pinching lint from her black apron, and the words went back down. I felt them slide into my chest like cold coins. Still, I had seen Miriam's face. I wasn't the only one. Turns out that's the community's best-selling lie. Leah's story came later, in pieces small enough to pass as gossip. Her mother-in-law had kept her first daughter downstairs for 2 nights because Leah was too weepy and might spoil the child. They fed the baby sugar water from a spoon, while Leah lay upstairs with her breasts hard and feverish, listening through a heating grate. Leah told me this while we peeled peaches behind the summer kitchen, and she never once stopped cutting. The juice ran down her wrist, bright as varnish, and she wiped it on her apron between sentences. "I asked once," she said. "They said I was proud." Then she laughed, but it came out flat. When women questioned the rule, the answer was prayer, more work, or a visit from an older sister who explained humility. Doubt was treated like a stain you could scrub out if you used enough lye. 4 months later, Leah stopped coming to quilting. Years passed that way, measured in births, funerals, and jars cooling beneath dish towels. My son grew broad-shouldered and gentle, with Eli's habit of rubbing a seam when he was worried. Anna died before I ever asked why she took him. At her funeral, I stood beside the lilac hedge and watched snow gather in the cuffs of men's trousers. I felt grief, real grief. She had taught me how to keep yeast alive through January and how to tell rain by the smell of the horse trough. She had also carried my child away from me. Beauty and harm, same hands. I left the district at 52, after Eli died. Though left sounds clean, and it wasn't. I came out slowly, like someone backing from a dark room because she doesn't trust the light. The sentence that changed everything was printed on a pale green clinic handout. Care without consent can still cause harm. I was 61, sitting in a county health office beneath a poster of a smiling orange sun wearing sunglasses. The chair was molded plastic and squeaked every time I breathed. A nurse named Denise had asked why I flinched when another nurse moved my handbag without telling me. I said I didn't flinch. Then my left hand started trembling on my knee and proved me a liar. Denise drew those 2 circles on the paper napkin, authority and care, and then slid the green sheet toward me. I read the sentence once, twice. On the 3rd time, my stomach clenched so hard I folded over, as if I'd been struck. Not anger, recognition. I wasn't angry. Not first. I was sad in a way that made the whole room seem farther away. I was sad for the girl in Eli's shirt with one cuff over her hand. The girl lifting empty arms toward a baby everyone believed they had a right to manage. I was sad for Eli too, standing by the walnut chest with no language for the choice in front of him. We had both been trapped inside the same silence. though the bars had not pressed on us in the same places. That's the thing nobody tells you. Naming harm doesn't always make you feel strong. Sometimes it makes you mourn the life that might have been possible if one person had said, "Sarah gets to decide." I grieved the missing version of that night more than the night itself. In that other version, Ruth lays him on my chest. Eli laughs because the baby sneezes. Anna stays beside the stove and waits to be asked. Nothing grand, just choice. Years later, I tried to explain this to a woman in a grocery line after she asked why I never liked anyone holding my grandson without warning. She said, "But they gave him back." Then she turned to unload a box of frozen waffles, and I stood there with a can of peaches in my hand, unable to tell her that returned isn't the same as untouched. I belonged nowhere in that moment. Too changed for the old world, too strange for the new one. I went home and put the peaches in the cupboard without opening them for 6 months. And still, there are gifts I carry. I miss the sound of horses before dawn, hooves pressing soft dents into snow, while harness rings clicked like tiny bells. I miss bread from a wood oven, the crust split down the middle and dusted with flour, and the way steam fogged Mama's spectacles when she cut the first loaf. I miss my grandmother's hands when she prayed, one thumb bent from an old break, both palms resting open on her apron as if she were holding rain. Those things are mine. I won't hand them back just because pain lived beside them. I am homesick for a place that hurt me, and I have stopped treating that sentence like a betrayal. The harm, though, has a name now. Silence dressed up as care. I can say that without spitting on every memory that came before it. Beauty and harm can live in the same house. I know because I slept there. What I'm building now is smaller and plainer. I ask before I touch. I tell my grandchildren they can say no without giving me a reason. When one of them pulls away, I let the space stay open instead of filling it with shame. Sometimes I still hear Anna telling me a weak mother makes a fretful child, and I answer her quietly in my head. She was wrong. But I also picture her washing linen in water cold enough to split her knuckles, doing what she believed was love. I can hold tenderness for her without giving the rule another inch. If you grew up somewhere your own body was kept from you like something dangerous, I see you. You survived something, and surviving is enough. You are not broken because you froze, went quiet, obeyed, stayed, left, or needed years before you found the words. Your body learned what it had to learn. That isn't weakness. That's memory doing its best to guard you. And maybe you're hearing this with your shoulders tight, or your teeth pressed together, or one hand wrapped around the other without knowing why. Let them loosen, just a little. You don't owe anyone a perfect ending to prove what happened mattered. To the one still inside, I see how carefully you read the room. To the one who left, I know freedom can feel lonely before it feels free. To the one thinking about leaving, your doubt is not a sin. To the one who's married, and only now seeing the shape of the silence, you aren't late. To the one who recognized herself a few minutes ago, breathe before you name everything at once. And to the one who loves people who hurt her because they were taught to call harm goodness, you don't have to flatten them into monsters to tell the truth. Wherever you are in this, I see you, and you are not alone. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you felt listening to this, or the moment your own body remembered before your mind did. There is so much more I haven't said yet. I'm just getting started. There are stories I haven't been brave enough to tell, but I'm getting closer, one honest sentence at a time. Subscribe to Rebecca Amish Home if you want to stay with me while I tell them not to watch pain from a distance, but to make room for voices that were trained to whisper. And to the members and Super Chat family, you're the reason the next story gets told. If you want to be part of that, the door is always open. You are always worthy of being asked.